up and battered around, been sent up and I've been shut down. You're the best thing that I've ever found. Handle me with care. Reputation's changeable, situation's tolerable, but baby you're adorable. Handle me with care. I'm so tired of being lonely. I still have some love to give. Won't you show me that you really care? Everybody's got somebody to lean on. Put your body next to mine and dream on. I've been fobbed off and I've been fooled. I've been robbed and ridiculed in daycare centers and night schools. Handle me with care.
Burton-on-Trent, commonly shortened to Burton, is a historic market town in East Staffordshire on the River Trent. The unparished urban core of Burton has a resident population of roughly 61,000 people, while the wider built-up area that spreads into neighbouring communities is closer to 76,000 in total, reflecting steady growth through the 20th and early 21st centuries. Burton acts as a commercial and cultural hub for the borough of East Staffordshire and neighbouring parts of Derbyshire, such as South Derbyshire and the Derbyshire Dales, thus balancing its industrial roots with modern amenities and services. Burton and its urban area also form a continuous built-up area with the neighbouring town of Swerdlincote in Derbyshire, and this area is commonly referred to as the Burton-upon-Trent and Swerdlincote Green Belt for planning. This urban area incorporates both towns, outlying suburbs, and villages. For Burton, this includes the suburbs and villages of Barton-under-Needwood, Beam Hill, Branston, Clay Mills, Horninglow, Rollston-on-Dove, Stapen Hill, Stretton, Tayton Hill and Winds Hill. While Swerdlincote suburbs and villages that form part of the urban area include Albert Village, Castle Gressley, Church Gressley, Drakelow, Midway, Mount Pleasant, Newhall, Stanton, Walton-on-Trent and Woodville. Ancient origins and early history. Settlement in the Trent Valley dates back thousands of years, but Burton's recorded origins centre on a Benedictine monastery founded around 1000 AD, which became the focal point for community life and trade. Before the Norman conquest, the place was known from Old English roots meaning a fortified settlement by the river. In medieval times, Burton's abbey held extensive estates, and the town grew up around its market and fairs granted by royal charter in the early 13th century, establishing its long-standing role as a regional centre for commerce. The Industrial Revolution transformed Burton dramatically. Its naturally mineral-rich water proved ideal for brewing pale ales, and by the late 19th century, dozens of breweries operated across the town, making Burton internationally synonymous with beer production. Transport improvements, particularly canals and railways, linked Burton to markets nationwide, boosting exports and attracting a skilled workforce. Brewing dominated local employment and shaped the town's identity, with coopers, maltsters and engineers supporting the industry's vast infrastructure. Notable landmarks of the town. St. Paul's Church. A prominent Victorian landmark, St. Paul's Church sits near the town centre and is recognised for its architectural ambition and craftsmanship. Built in the early 1870s under the patronage of local benefactors, the church features a cruciform layout with a soaring central tower and an interior rich in Gothic-inspired detail. Its importance in Burton's ecclesiastical life is reflected in its Grade II * status, marking it as a heritage asset of particular historical and architectural interest. The Michael Arthur Base Monument. Located just outside of both the Town Hall on King Edward Place and facing St. Paul's Church opposite St. Paul's Square, stands a bronze statue of Michael Arthur Base, 1st Baron Burton, sculpted in the early 20th century in his civic uniform and robes. Bass was a leading figure in Burton's largest brewing family and a benefactor to the town, funding public buildings and civic improvements. The statue itself is Grade II listed, commemorating his influence on Burton's industrial and civic landscape at the height of its prosperity. Burton Town Hall. Completed in 1878 and later extended, Burton Town Hall is a Victorian Gothic municipal building central to the town's identity. Originally commissioned by the Bass family and gifted to the borough, its distinctive clock tower and stone detailing anchor King Edward Place. The town hall is Grade II listed, and over time, the building has accommodated civic administration, cultural events, and wartime service, and it continues to serve the community as the headquarters for East Staffordshire's local government. Burton Market Hall. Facing the marketplace, Burton Market Hall was completed in 1883 and stands as a testament to the town's commercial vitality in the late 19th century. Its Renaissance-influenced facade and richly carved details symbolized Burton's growth and the importance of local trade. The hall is Grade II listed and continues to operate as a market venue, linking present-day town life with centuries of commerce in this central gathering space. St. Modwen's Church. At the heart of the historic core, St. Modwen's Church overlooks the market square. Dedicated to the early medieval figure credited with bringing Christianity to the area, the current Georgian building replaced the earlier Abbey Church and retains its importance as Burton's mother church. Its Grade I status reflects exceptional heritage value, with architectural and historical layers reaching back to the town's foundational era. A commuter hub for the Midlands. In the contemporary era, Burton increasingly serves as a commuter town for several nearby cities. Its rail and road connections make travel to Derby, Nottingham, Leicester, Stoke-on-Trent, Birmingham and Lichfield practical for daily commuters and regional access. This accessibility, combined with comparatively lower living costs than some larger cities, has encouraged residential growth and diversified the local economy beyond brewing. Burton-on-Trent Railway Station Overview. Burton-on-Trent Station stands as a cornerstone of the Midlands transport heritage, serving as a vital link on the cross-country route. The station serves the large industrial and historic market town of Burton-on-Trent in East Staffordshire, England. While the station today is managed by East Midlands Railway and features a modern aesthetic, its identity remains deeply rooted in the town's world-renowned brewing industry. Over the span of nearly 2 centuries, the site has evolved from a simple roadside stop into a massive industrial nexus, reflecting the broader transitions of British rail from the Victorian Golden Age to the efficiency of the modern era. The first railway station. The station's history began in 1839 when it was inaugurated by the Birmingham and Derby Junction Railway. In its earliest form, the station was quite primitive, consisting of little more than a small functional hut positioned next to a level crossing. This original route connected Derby to Hampton-in-Arden, where it joined the London and Birmingham Railway to facilitate travel to the capital. Despite its humble beginnings, this link quickly established Burton as a critical point on the burgeoning national rail map, eventually leading to the construction of a more permanent 2-story building to handle growing traffic. The second railway station. The 1880s marked a period of grand transformation driven by the sheer volume of passengers and goods passing through the town. In 1881, the older structures were demolished to make way for a much larger island platform design. This new station, which opened in 1883, was designed by the company architect John Holloway Sanders and constructed by Messrs. Cox of Leicester. It was a sophisticated facility for its time, featuring a large timbered booking hall in the early English style and a glass canopy that sheltered platforms extending nearly a quarter of a mile in length. Travelers could enjoy first and third class refreshment rooms, a dedicated dining area, and a W. H. Smith newsstand, all accessible via a new bridge supervised by the engineer Mr. Campion. Decline of the Leicester, Burton and South Staffordshire lines. During the first half of the 20th century, Burton served as a bustling regional hub and terminus for several secondary routes. These included the South Staffordshire Line to Lichfield City, the Leicester-Burton line passing through Colville Town, and a branch to Tutbury and Hatton. However, the mid-1960s brought significant contraction under the British Railways modernisation plans and the Beeching Acts. Between 1960 and 1965, these secondary passenger services were systematically withdrawn, ending Burton's era as a multidirectional junction and focusing its operations primarily on the main line. The third railway station. The physical landscape of the station changed forever in 1970 when the Victorian architecture was largely swept away. As part of a nationwide push for modernization, the 1883 buildings were replaced with the current functional, minimalist structures. Of the Grand Sanders designed station, only the staircase leading down to the platform level survived the demolition, serving as a solitary architectural link to the site's 19th-century peak. This rebuild prioritized operational efficiency over aesthetic grandeur, aligning with the utilitarian standards of British rail at the time. The motive power depot. A defining characteristic of the station's history is its intimate relationship with the brewing trade. Burton was once famously crisscrossed by an intricate network of private brewery railway lines and numerous level crossings, which allowed for the seamless transport of beer from local vats to the national market. To support this massive industrial output, a significant locomotive shed was established south of the station in 1870. This facility featured a 42-foot roundhouse and turntable, which was eventually expanded and upgraded in 1892 and again in 1923 to accommodate larger, more powerful engines. The closure of the depot. The motive power depot, originally coded 2 by the Midland Railway and later 17B, was a hive of steam activity, boasting an allocation of 111 locomotives by 1948. However, the transition to diesel power in the early 1960s led to a major reorganization of the London Midland region. Under the new Toton-based division, Burton was recoded as 16F. The era of steam at the depot officially ended in September 1966, and the facility closed to steam entirely in 1968. For a time, the site continued to serve a vital role as a stabling and fueling point for the diesel locomotives that replaced the aging steam fleet. The station in the present day and the possible future reopening of the Leicester, Burton and South Staffordshire lines. In the 21st century, the station has seen a series of targeted investments to improve the passenger experience, including a £700,000 refurbishment in 2011 and a forecourt redevelopment in 2019 to better integrate bus and taxi services. Looking to the future, there is a strong local movement, led by the campaign to reopen the Ivanhoe line, to restore passenger services between Burton and Leicester. Proposals have even suggested introducing trams to the South Staffordshire Line to stimulate tourism. Today, the station's legacy lives on not just in its infrastructure but in literature like Nicholas Whitaker's Platform Souls, which captures the station's enduring importance to the town's identity. Branston Railway Station Overview. Branston Station served as a testament to 19th century's people power. In 1887, residents, feeling bypassed by the rapidly expanding rail network, began a concerted petitioning effort directed at the Midland Railway. They found a powerful ally in their local MP, Sidney Evershed, whose political weight helped convince the company that a stop between the major hubs of Tamworth and Burton was economically viable. The station served the historic village of Branston in East Staffordshire. The village is now a suburban village of the town of Burton-on-Trent. Opening of the station officially welcomed its first passengers on October 1, 1889. Strategically placed on the historic line originally carved out by the Birmingham and Derby Junction Railway, it offered the village direct access to the industrial heart of the region. This opening represented a victory for the local community, integrating what was then a smaller settlement into the primary artery of the Midlands transport system. The introduction of station masters. During its early years, the station was managed by a series of dedicated stationmasters who were often promoted to larger hubs. James Collins served as the inaugural master from 1889 to 1891, followed by J.J.W. Grundy and G.W. King. These men oversaw the station during its most active period, ensuring that the logistical needs of both local commuters and small-scale goods transport were met with Victorian precision. The withdrawal of station masters. By the turn of the century, however, the management structure began to reflect a decline in the station's perceived importance. Following the tenure of W. Lee, which ended in 1906, the Midland Railway decided that a resident station master was no longer necessary. Instead, the daily operations were handed over to a porter dispatched from the nearby Burton station, signaling a transition from a primary community hub to a secondary halt. Decline of the station. The interwar period brought the greatest challenge to Branston's viability, the rise of the internal combustion engine. As local bus services became more frequent, reliable, and capable of stopping closer to people's homes than the railway could, passenger numbers began a steady and terminal decline. The railway simply could not compete with the door-to-door flexibility of the new motorized transport. Closure of the station. The end of the line for Branston arrived on Sunday, September 21, 1930. On this day, the last scheduled train pulled away from the platform, marking the end of just over 4 decades of service. Present-day usage. Today, nothing remains of the station building or platforms. The grade-separated single line has since been lifted. Also, today, the line continues to be used for services between Tamworth and Burton-on-Trent, as well as freight traffic and diverted passenger services. Barton and Walton Railway Station Overview. Barton and Walton Station was a product of the very first wave of railway mania, opening in 1839. It was a key component of the Birmingham and Derby Junction Railway's original vision to connect the Midlands to London via Hampton-in-Arden. Its placement was geographically curious. While it was built on Staffordshire soil in the Staffordshire village of Barton-under-Needwood, it was designed primarily to serve the Derbyshire village of Walton-upon-Trent, creating a cross-border utility that was common in early rail planning. Opening of the station. In its infancy, the station was a Spartan affair, likely operating as little more than a basic halt for the rural population. However, as the Midland Railway took control and the line's importance increased, the infrastructure underwent significant upgrades. The simple wooden or earth structures were replaced with substantial, high-quality brick buildings, reflecting the Midland's corporate pride and the increasing volume of regional traffic. Odd station name arrangement. The station's name itself was a point of logistical evolution. Originally known simply as Walton, the Midland Railway was compelled to reconsider its designation in 1846. With the opening of another Walton station on the Siston and Peterborough line, the company added Barton to the title to prevent confusion for passengers and mail sorters alike. This change cemented the station's identity as a bridge between the two neighbouring communities. For over a century, the station served as a reliable, if quiet, link in the regional chain. It survived the consolidation of the grouping in 1923 and the nationalisation of the railways in 1948. Throughout these years, it remained a classic example of a mid-sized Victorian station, characterised by its sturdy architecture and its role as a steady, dependable fixture of local life. Decline and closure of the station. The decline of rural rail usage in the post-war era eventually caught up with Barton and Walton. Official passenger services were formally withdrawn in 1958, as British Railways looked to streamline operations and cut costs on underused secondary stops. The station buildings, once a hive of local activity, were shuttered, and the site began its transition from an active transport hub to a historical relic. Ghost station revival before full closure. Interestingly, the station experienced a brief, ghostly revival 3 years after its official closure. On September 11, 1961, an unadvertised train made a final, recorded stop at the platforms. While the reasons for this late-stage visit remain a footnote in local law, it served as a poignant last call for a station that had witnessed the entirety of the railway's evolution from its experimental beginnings to its modern consolidation. Present-day usage. Today, the station and its platforms have long been demolished. The lines through the site continue to be used for passenger services between Tamworth and Burton-on-Trent, as well as freight traffic and diverted passenger services. Wichnor Junction Railway Station Overview. Wichnor Junction was born not out of community demand, but out of corporate necessity and a breakdown in diplomacy. It served the small village of Wichnor and the hamlet of Wichnor Bridges in East Staffordshire. When the South Staffordshire Railway opened its line from Walsall to Wichnor in 1849, it initially enjoyed a peaceful agreement with the Midland Railway to run trains directly into Burton. However, by 1853, relations soured so significantly that the Midland revoked these rights, forcing the construction of an interchange station at the junction itself in 1855. Opening of the station became a flashpoint for one of the most dramatic railway wars of the 19th century. In 1861, after the London and North Western Railway took over the South Staffordshire Line, it attempted to force its way back into Burton. The Midland responded with scorched earth tactics, sending an army of navvies and 2 powerful locomotives to literally rip up the rails to prevent the rival LNWR train from proceeding. Standoff between 2 rival companies. This standoff at Wichnor Junction, which saw the LNWR train forced to retreat to Lichfield, was eventually resolved via a high-level telegram from Midland officials in Derby. The realization that the LNWR had already secured independent routes into London forced the Midlands' hand. This great concession allowed the LNWR entry into the lucrative Burton brewing traffic, and peace was finally restored to the junction's tracks. Decline of the station's importance. As the years passed, the fierce competition of the 1860s gave way to a more mature, collaborative era of rail management. The running powers for the LNWR were reinstated permanently, and the necessity for a dedicated interchange station at the junction began to fade. The logistics of the region had evolved, direct through services became the norm, rendering the isolated platforms at Wichnor increasingly redundant. Closure of the station. By 1877, the station was deemed unnecessary for passenger traffic. Its role as a physical gatekeeper between two warring companies had ended. The stationmaster was transferred to nearby Croxall, and the site began a swift wind down. On April 8, 1878, the remaining staff were placed under external supervision, and the station effectively vanished from the public timetable. Present-day usage. Today, Wichnor Junction remains one of the most critical operational points on the Midlands rail network, though the passenger platforms are long gone. It serves as a vital fringe for signalling operations, managed by the East Midlands Rail Operating Centre. While commuters now fly through the junction without a second thought, the ground beneath them once hosted a literal battle for the future of British freight. Alrewas Railway Station Overview. Alrewas Station was a classic example of a Victorian roadside stop, defined by its proximity to a busy level crossing. It served the village of Alrewas in South Staffordshire, as well as the neighbouring villages of Croxall and Fradley, though the station itself was a slight distance east of the main village centre, separated from the village by the modern-day A38 road Ricknold Street. Opening of the station. Opened by the South Staffordshire Railway, it was eventually absorbed into the massive London Midland and Scottish Railway during the 1923 grouping. Its life was intertwined with the village's geography, serving as a vital connection for a community that sat at the crossroads of major regional thoroughfares. Decline and closure of the station. The station weathered the transition to nationalisation in 1948, but its fate was ultimately sealed by the Beeching Axe in the mid-1960s. In January 1965, as part of a nationwide effort to eliminate loss-making branch lines and stations, Alrewas was closed to passengers. The tracks remained, but the station's role changed from a gateway for people to a high-speed corridor for freight and long-distance diversions. Present-day usage. In the decades following its closure, the site maintained a quiet operational importance. The station's original signal box survived the purge, continuing to manage the level crossing and the complex single-track sections leading toward Wichnor Junction. This survival ensured that Alrewas remained on the map for railway staff, even if it was no longer a destination for the general public. The 21st century has brought a remarkable shift in the station's prospects. With the opening of the National Memorial Arboretum nearby, a site that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, the lack of a local rail link became a glaring omission in the regional infrastructure. This modern catalyst has transformed the lost station of Alrewas into a primary candidate for reopening. Possible reopening. Recent franchise agreements and regional transport strategies have added fuel to this fire. In 2018, Transport for the West Midlands proposed a 30-year strategy that could see Alrewas reopened by 2034. The plan envisions the station as a key stop on an extended cross-city line, providing twice-hourly services between Lichfield and Burton, and potentially reconnecting the village to Walsall via the currently mothballed South Staffordshire Line. As of today, the push for Alrewas's return is stronger than ever, bolstered by plans for significant local housing developments on former quarry sites. The station represents a rare case where the Beeching cut might actually be reversed. If successful, Alrewas will transition from a historical footnote back into a modern transport hub, serving both the local community and the national mourners and tourists visiting the Arboretum. Lichfield-Trent Valley Junction Railway Station Overview. Lichfield-Trent Valley Junction Station was built to serve the South Staffordshire Line between Lichfield City and Burton-on-Trent, offering a connection to the Trent Valley Railway's Lichfield Station. This was built at the cross lines of the South Staffordshire Line and the Trent Valley Railway, now part of the West Coast Main Line. It was named after the nearby cathedral city of Lichfield, but the site was actually closer to the neighbouring villages of Streathey and Huddlesford in South Staffordshire. Opening of the station. The story of the original Lichfield-Trent Valley Junction station began in August 1849, born from the South Staffordshire Railway's need to create a physical interface with the recently opened Trent Valley Line. Unlike the integrated station we see today, this was a distinct, standalone facility. It was established as a strategic outpost, designed specifically to manage the intersection of the SSR's east-west regional route and the larger company's north-south artery, serving as a vital link for the industrial Midlands. Odd arrangement of the station. In its earliest years, the station acted as a pioneer for the vertical interchange concept, though it was far from seamless. Passengers arriving from the Black Country or the city centre would have to navigate a relatively primitive site to transfer to the low-level tracks of the London and North Western Railway. The station buildings were functional and reflected the SSR's utilitarian approach, but their strategic importance was undeniable as it sat at the gateway to the brewing capital of Burton-on-Trent. Rivalry between two companies. The relationship between the SSR and the LNWR at this junction was often characterized by a mix of fierce competition and grudging cooperation. Because the SSR used the junction to feed traffic into the LNWR's main line toward London, the station became a hive of activity for mail, livestock, and urgent freight. However, the physical separation of the platforms across the two different levels meant that the junction station often felt like two separate entities working in tandem rather than a single unified hub. Decline of the station. By the 1860s, the limitations of having separate, disjointed platforms for the two lines became a significant bottleneck for the increasing volume of Victorian rail travel. The LNWR, which had begun to exert more influence over the South Staffordshire Line, realised that a modern, consolidated station was necessary to handle the prestige of what we now call the West Coast Main Line. Plans were drawn up to move the passenger facilities to a more centralised location where the tracks physically crossed. Closure of the station. The original Trent Valley Junction station reached the end of its life on July 3, 1871. On this date, the old SSR platforms were closed to make way for the present Lichfield-Trent Valley station, which integrated both the high and low-level services into a single operational site. This closure marked the end of the first chapter of Lichfield's rail history, as the junction designation shifted from being the name of a station to describing the physical track layout. Present-day usage. Today, while the 1849 station buildings are long gone, the site remains one of the most operationally significant junctions in the country. It serves as a reminder of the era when independent railway companies had to build their own dedicated stops just to touch the tracks of a rival. The junction remains a critical piece of infrastructure, currently used by freight and for moving empty stock to the Central Rivers depot, and it is the linchpin for plans to restore passenger services to the route. Lichfield-Trent Valley High-Level Railway Station Overview. Lichfield-Trent Valley High-Level Station is both an operational station and the northern terminus of the modern-day Cross-City Line, which connects Lichfield with the royal town of Sutton Coldfield and the major city of Birmingham in the West Midlands County, and then onward south to the towns of Bromsgrove and Redditch in Worcestershire. It was a major interchange on the former South Staffordshire Line between Burton-on-Trent, Lichfield, and Walsall. The station serves the nearby villages of Streathey and Huddlesford, as well as the northern part of the cathedral city of Lichfield in South Staffordshire. Opening of the station. The high-level platforms at the new 1871 station inherited the spirit of the original junction station, perched on a massive brick embankment that carries the South Staffordshire Line over the West Coast Main Line. Designed as part of a unified Victorian interchange, these platforms allowed passengers to traverse between the regional line and the national artery via a series of steep staircases. It was an architectural solution to a geographical problem, creating a station in the clouds that looked down upon the high-speed tracks below. Operational importance. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the high level was the primary conduit for travellers moving between Birmingham, Lichfield, and Burton. It was a bustling site where the smell of steam from regional tank engines mingled with the soot of the expresses passing underneath. The station featured its own waiting rooms and staff, operating as a distinct world from the low level, though both were managed under the increasingly centralised authority of the LNWR and later the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. Closure of the high-level station. The high level faced a terminal crisis in 1965 when it fell victim to the beaching axe. With the withdrawal of passenger services on the South Staffordshire Line toward Burton, the high-level platforms were boarded up and abandoned. For over 2 decades, the station became a haunting sight for passengers on the West Coast Main Line, a set of decaying wooden platforms and rusted railings that sat silent while freight trains continued to rumble past, oblivious to the empty station. Reopening of the high-level station. The 1980s provided a dramatic third act for the high level. As part of a regional push to revitalise the West Midlands rail network, the Cross-City Line was extended from Lichfield City to Trent Valley to restore the interchange with the main line. In 1988, the high level was completely rebuilt with modern materials, ending its 23-year ghost status. This reopening was a landmark moment for local transport, re-establishing the vertical link that had been severed in the 1960s. Present-day usage. Following the 1988 revival, the high level became the northern terminus for the newly electrified cross-city services. The introduction of modern electric multiple units transformed the quiet embankment into a high-frequency commuter hub. The station's role shifted from a through station to a vital turnback point, where trains from Birmingham would arrive on the high bridge, allow passengers to descend to the main line, and then depart back toward the city. Potential extension of passenger services back to Burton-on-Trent. In the 2020s, the high level remains at the centre of ambitious plans. With the campaign to reopen the Ivanhoe line gaining momentum, there is a possibility that these platforms could once again serve through trains to Burton and Leicester. Recent investments in lift access have finally made the vertical transition between the levels accessible to all, ensuring that the high level remains a functional and inclusive piece of the city's infrastructure for the next generation of travellers. Lichfield is a cathedral city in Staffordshire, England, with roots stretching back to at least the 7th century, when St. Chad established a bishopric here, giving the settlement lasting religious significance. Over the medieval period, the city developed as an important ecclesiastical centre, drawing pilgrims and clergy alike. Its historic core, shaped by defensive ditches, waterways and the cathedral close, reflects this deep heritage. Lichfield maintained a distinct identity through the centuries, prospering as a market and ecclesiastical town while avoiding the heavy industrialisation seen elsewhere in the county. The hub at St Mary's occupies the former St Mary's Church, a striking historic building in Lichfield city centre that is Grade 2 listed. Originally designed as a parish church with characteristic Gothic detailing, tall lancet windows, stone piers, and an elevated chancel, it has been sensitively refurbished to serve contemporary civic and cultural purposes. Its architecture retains the scale and dignity of its original ecclesiastical use while accommodating modern community gatherings, arts events, exhibitions, and performances. As a central civic space, the hub plays a significant role in Lichfield's cultural life. Its location within the Lichfield City Conservation Area links it visually and socially to surrounding heritage assets, making it a vital touchpoint between the city's medieval fabric and present-day community activities. The building's adaptive reuse underscores Lichfield's approach to preserving historic structures while meeting the needs of a growing and active urban population. At the heart of Lichfield stands Lichfield Cathedral, one of the United Kingdom's most remarkable medieval churches. It is one of only 3 cathedrals in the UK with 3 spires, a distinction shared with Truro Cathedral in Cornwall and St Mary's Episcopal Cathedral in Edinburgh, Scotland, and is affectionately known locally as the Ladies of the Vale. The cathedral's Grade 1 listed status reflects its exceptional architectural and historic importance, with construction spanning Norman and Gothic phases that have produced richly decorated stonework, stained glass, and sculptural detail. More than a historic monument, the cathedral remains an active centre of worship, music and community life, hosting services, concerts, lectures, and seasonal events. Its spires have shaped the city's skyline for centuries, reinforcing Lichfield's identity as a place of spiritual, cultural, and civic significance. The Cathedral Close and surrounding streets form one of the most complete medieval precincts in England, anchoring the city's heritage and acting as a focal point for tourism and local pride. Lichfield's transport connections have been central to its expansion and appeal. Lichfield Trent Valley Station on the West Coast Main Line provides fast services north to Stafford, Stoke-on-Trent and Crewe, and south to Milton Keynes and London, while the Cross-City Line offers frequent commuter links to Birmingham New Street, Bromsgrove and Redditch. These connections have helped transform Lichfield into a desirable location for commuters working across the Midlands and beyond. Today, Lichfield is both a historic city and a growing commuter hub. Its population, recorded at around 34,700 in the 2021 census, remains predominantly white at 94.8%, identifying as white, but includes increasing representation from Asian at 2.3%, mixed at 1.9%, black at 0.6%, and other ethnic groups. In terms of religious identity, 54.2% identify as Christian, while 38.1% report no religion, and small proportions follow Sikh at 0.9%, Muslim at 0.7%, Hindu at 0.4%, Buddhist at 0.2%, and other faiths. These figures illustrate a city that remains grounded in tradition while becoming more diverse. The city has seen substantial housing growth in neighbouring villages and suburbs such as Kerberoff, Fradley, Netherstowe, and Street Hay, where new developments have expanded residential capacity to meet rising demand. This expansion reflects broader regional pressures, including the need to support housing demand from the West Midlands County, where growth in Birmingham and surrounding areas has fueled commuting patterns into Staffordshire. At the same time, the construction of High-Speed 2 between Lichfield and Armitage has brought major civil engineering works, with long periods of earthworks and landscape disruption in the surrounding countryside. While controversial locally, HS2 is expected to stimulate economic activity and may further influence housing and development patterns in and around the city. As the city continues to grow, balancing heritage conservation with new housing and infrastructure remains a central theme of local planning and community discussion, shaping Lichfield's evolution into the coming decades. Lichfield City Railway Station Overview. Lichfield City Station serves the cathedral city of Lichfield in South Staffordshire. It is one of two stations serving the city and its suburbs, with the other being nearby Lichfield-Trent Valley Station on both the Cross City Line and the West Coast Main Line. The station is also located north of the former Sutton-Coldfield Line junction, where the disused section of the former South Staffordshire Line towards Walsall, Dudley, and Stourbridge Junction diverged off the modern-day Cross City Line. Opening of the station. Lichfield City Station opened in 1849 as the urban counterpart to the more remote Trent Valley sites. Originally established by the South Staffordshire Railway, it was located much closer to the historic cathedral and the city's commercial heart, making it the preferred choice for residents. In its earliest form, it served as a terminus for the line from Walsall, acting as a dead-end station that funneled industrial traffic and passengers directly into the centre of the city. Expansion of the station's services. The station's identity changed in 1858 when the tracks were extended northeast to meet the Trent Valley Junction. This extension transformed Lichfield City from a quiet terminus into a major through station on the route to Burton and beyond. This period saw a massive influx of traffic driven by the brewing industry, and the station became a vital link for the distribution of Burton ale, with local sidings often filled with wagons destined for the pubs of Birmingham and the South. Rebuilding of the station. In 1884, the station underwent a grand Victorian reconstruction under the London and North Western Railway. The new buildings were designed in a robust red brick style, featuring extensive glass canopies and a formal booking hall that reflected Lichfield's status as a prestigious cathedral city. This era represented the station's aesthetic peak, with a layout that prioritized the comfort of the growing middle-class commuter population that was beginning to settle in the city suburbs. The station's survival of National Railway closures. While many nearby stations were shuttered during the 1960s, Lichfield City's survival was never in doubt due to its consistently high passenger volumes. However, it did lose its through-station status for passengers in 1964 when the line to Burton was closed to public travel. For the next several decades, the station returned to its roots as a terminus for services from Birmingham, though the tracks to the north remained active for the heavy freight trains that bypassed the city platforms. Second rebuilding of the station? The 1990s saw a total architectural reinvention of the site. The aging Victorian station was demolished and replaced with a modern, glass-fronted terminal and a simplified layout designed for the high-intensity cross-city electric service. This redevelopment integrated the station more effectively with the city's bus station and modern shopping areas, cementing its role as a multimodal transport hub rather than just a historic railway stop. Present-day importance. Today, Lichfield City is one of the busiest stations in the West Midlands, serving as a vital artery for thousands of people working in the Birmingham conurbation. While the modern buildings show little of the station's 19th-century origins, the hump in the track layout and the orientation of the platforms still follow the exact path laid down by the South Staffordshire Railway over 175 years ago. It remains the beating heart of the city's connection to the wider region. Potential reopenings. There are strong cases to reintroduce services northwards back to Burton-on-Trent via the cross-city line, with a potential new station at nearby Alrewas to serve the National Memorial Arboretum. These are in plans for rail strategies and proposals. Additionally, the former line to Walsall has been preserved as a greenway and public right-of-way, meaning the line could be reopened for either railway or light rail uses.